What happens after you die? It's a question that has haunted humanity for millennia, and today we're about to shed some light on it. Have you ever wondered if there's a light at the end of the tunnel? Or if those tales of heavenly realms and ethereal beings are more than just stories? Today we'll hear extraordinary accounts from individuals who've seen the afterlife, those who've glimpsed the other side and have returned with tales that defy logic and expectation. From the serene to the startling. Today on this episode of the TruthSeekah Podcast, TruthSeekah is joined by Stephen Gray, the director of a new film from the same people who have brought you films like The Sound of Freedom and the critically acclaimed series The Chosen. Angel Studios presents After Death, a film that explores and uncovers near-death experiences, the shocking realities and what they reveal. Buckle up, dear listener, for this episode is truly a journey beyond the veil.
Really quick, before we get started, if you are blessed by this ministry, if you're blessed by this platform, anything that I bring to the table, I ask you to partner with me via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah and you unlock rewards, my entire discography of music, webinars, meditations, weekly hangouts, and so much more. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Go check it out.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah Podcast, streaming live at TruthSeekah.com, your source for spiritual and inspirational music, teachings, and media. This show is designed to help you grow in your walk with Christ and advance the kingdom of heaven. And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the TruthSeekah Podcast. I'm your host, TruthSeekah. Today, my guest is Stephen Gray. Stephen, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for having me here.
In the middle of watching your new film and captivated. Seen a lot of films like it before, but this one is different. It holds your attention. The cinematography, you knowing how to tell a story. Man, I want to discuss all of this with you. The new film. Again, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's awesome to chat with you about this and kind of go through, some of the story of how this film came to be.
Yeah, so the film is After Death, and you directed it.
Yep. Yeah, so After Death, it releases in theaters October 27th. And actually, the crazy thing is, today we're looking at it's above 2,000 screens. So, it's been a pretty wild journey to get to this point. But right now, the film's going to go to above 2,000 screens, which puts us at an all-time top 10 doc release, which is significant for a film that talks about near-death experiences. Yeah, really excited about it.
No, it's awesome, and it's gonna bless a lot of people. I was kind of, I would say upset, but I'm ready to finish it because I'm at the edge of my seat, and I was like, oh, I gotta go do the interview, so I gotta talk to you about the film, and it's good. So I'm ready to get in there and finish it.
It's cool.
I don't know if you want to give anything away. We don't have to, but I'm at the edge of my seat, and it's answering questions that we all have. So, why this film? You said it was something personal that led you to research this and want to get this story out and these many stories out to people. Can you talk about your relationship with the film and with the subject?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been a filmmaker for about 15 years now. I've been an editor, director, producer, kind of wearing multiple hats on lots of different things. mostly commercial work. But a number of years ago, my brother-in-law was actually killed in a car wreck, and it was devastating to be honest with you. So in my personal journey, I mean, outside of film and all that, I was born and raised in a Christian home. You know, I went to church all my life. I was actually raised in a Pentecostal church, and you know, later I went to a Baptist church. It kind of got, in terms of the Christian background, the full spectrum of you know, two sides of the coin. But you know, at that moment in my life, I really kind of began to ask questions, and honestly kind of struggled with this kind of reality of heaven. And yeah, to be fair, it was like the sudden immediate death of, you know, my brother-in-law. I was just being so close to him, was just kind of like, how could there be a God and there be, you know, this much pain and this much chaos? I was just seeing nothing but chaos, and it didn't really make sense. Nothing made sense about, you know, our story, our journey there. And so that's eventually what led me onto a path of learning about near-death experiences. First, I think there was a few people that were recommending books and stories. You know, it was like, I think this will be helpful for you. And my mother-in-law, my mother-in-law, sorry, she was the one to first read some of these stories, and she got hooked. I'm not a big reader, to be honest with you. In books, I love film, and I'm more of a visual person. It's just, I mean, that's the world I'm in. And so I didn't right away read books, but actually someone gave me it was an audio, like a CD interview of people who had these near-death experiences. And actually one of the first ones that I heard was this guy, Dr. Richard Eby. And he talked about how he had fallen. He's a medical doctor, and he had fallen, I think it was 2 stories, and fell on like a sidewalk, and basically had his head split open. And what he was describing after that moment was like, I think it captivated me in a way that like nothing else really spoke to me. Like, this was like the way he was articulating the things that he saw and experienced in such detail, because this guy's a doctor. He's so specific on extreme detail on, you know, he looks at the world with, you know, a lot of detail, kind of more of a methodical, you know, kind of maybe a bit more engineering kind of mind. And so that's his orientation. So when he was in this, you know, out-of-body experience, and then, you know, he had this heaven experience, and he's walking along with Jesus, and he's having like this, you know, incredible conversation about his life, and all the things he's describing in terms of even the body that he had, and like the physicality of it, and yet it's a body made of light, and all this kind of stuff was like, I mean, this is my first time ever hearing this. Never heard of any of this stuff before. And it was just I was just like, why is this doctor talking about this kind of stuff? It's just like, that's not in his vocabulary, you know? Like, it's not typical you would hear a doctor kind of describe things in this way, and in such a, you know, talking about in terms of the spirit realm. And then, you know, he comes back, and it was pretty miraculous in the way he came back. And then I heard, you know, a bunch of other people on the same audio tape, and it just, like I say, it just captivated me. I was like, I need to know more. So from that, my family and I, we read probably like 30 books, like right away, cover to cover, and I just couldn't get enough. But for me, again, with more visual, audio, and video experiences is how I'm consuming a lot of things. And I'm gravitating always towards more people's personal stories and personal journeys. Again, more of a documentary format. That was what I would do with commercial work. My commercial work would typically be a more documentary approach, that I was always interested in the people behind a product, a story behind, you know, like a brand or something like that. That was always my, you know, what I was interested in. And so for me, again, with these stories, it was like, I want to hear from these people and their experiences. Like, I want to know more. You know, it's captured in the book, but I just like, I just knew there was more there. And so I consumed every kind of, you know, video and video, you know, film that was out there at the time, which there wasn't much. This started in 2013. This is before the movie Heaven is for Real came out. There's a few kind of films about, you know, kind of spiritual stuff, and like a little bit about heaven, not much though. And a lot of stuff was kind of 70s, a little bit kind of the 80s, a little bit in the 90s. just wasn't a lot in the mainstream, and I needed that. And so because I didn't find it, I just it was a itch that I couldn't scratch. And so I just had to go and tell these stories. And so my wife and I just kind of decided, why don't we just put away a chunk of time, save up as much money as we can, and we'll just pick one story and we'll tell it. And if it doesn't go anywhere else, it's fine. The intention was always to tell a feature, because I was always, if I'm reading 30 books, there was something so profound about this chorus of stories to me, because it's one thing for one person to have this personal kind of subjective experience. It's another thing entirely to have this chorus of people who don't know each other, have such different backgrounds, and they're saying such similar things. Like, the overlap was uncanny. And so I always thought that would be, an amazing story to tell. But as a filmmaker without resources, I didn't really have the means to go and tell a feature length. So I started with one story. And in 2017, I filmed and told the story of Captain Dale Black in a little short called Discovering Heaven. And yeah, it was just a 10-minute short. Again, it's just, see where it goes. And there was this guy who had this plane crash in 1969. He hit this monument in Burbank, California, with 2 other pilots. It was a cargo airplane, so there was only 3 pilots in it, and 2 other pilots died, and they weren't able to bring them back. Dale eventually lived. I think it was 16 minutes after the crash. Eventually the firefighters had got there, and there's some signs of vitals, so they threw him and one other pilot who had a little bit of signs of vitals. The same ambulance rushed him to an emergency hospital. They lost one, and Dale was kept, but barely. It was critical condition for a long period of time, and he had a full near-death experience. And the things that he's talking about and describing are, he's seeing details of the crash from outside his body, and he's at first confused, and he's seeing things about, like the people who came and first responded to the accident, which is exactly what actually happened, which included some engineers from a Skunk Works program just outside where the monument was that we're working on. I think it was like the Blackbird aircraft, which wasn't public yet, and they're wearing like the skinny ties, the white shirts, the look of engineers back in 1969, and there's like 3 or 4 of them that had come out. I think it was a few of them, and they came out and they were wondering, what is this that happened outside. And so he's seeing all this stuff from outside of him, and he recognizes his body, and he sees the 2 other pilots, and it's just like, how is that me? I'm here, and I think he was something like, he said 15 feet above his body. And as they put him into the ambulance, he's still outside his body, and he's following the ambulance along the journey to the hospital. And then from the hospital, the operating procedures happening, and then he's brought up by 2 angels that are bringing him up towards heaven. And he gets to kind of like the outer area of heaven. He's descending into this place, and he's seeing kind of a glimpse of it, and then he has to go back. Meeting Dale and hearing his story, and then talking to his wife and his kids, that was like, if the audio tape left something like a mark on me, that meeting Dale was like, it was 10 times crazier, because this guy just has, I would say probably a lot of credibility to lose in his peers, because he's an airline pilot, and he had actually worked as an investigator for doing NTSB investigations, and he had run other businesses and stuff. And so all of his friends and colleagues and stuff, are very analytical. A lot of engineers, and pilots, and they're very just matter of fact, and this, this plus this equals this, and the spiritual stuff just doesn't, we don't talk about that because it just doesn't have any place in the pilot's world. And yet he's putting, his whole kind of, I guess, appearance kind of on the line, just talking about it, because this is real, this happened, and actually that's more real than here. So to me, that was like, there was something really different about him that kind of cracked open the door. And then eventually I actually connected with Cypher Studios, is the production company who made the feature film After Death. And when they saw the short, they could see the vision that we had for the feature, and they totally got behind it. Jason and Jens as producers, they're a little more skeptical, I would say, than me, especially Jens. He was kind of where I was before, where he wasn't sure about, for some reason, it's like he could, I think he would say that he believes in heaven, but he for some reason just didn't think he could go there, and that just didn't make any sense, and so he just never really thought about it. So when we started the journey of doing the feature length, it was truly a journey for a lot of us. I was years now ahead, and I became convinced, but I also had the producers with me who were skeptics, and so we wanted to take that approach with the film and not assume anything of the audience, not assume that someone has even a Christian background or has any faith background, maybe hasn't given any thought to spiritual reality whatsoever, and we want to bring them on a journey and explore near-death experiences, both from a science side, a more kind of skeptical science side, as well as the story side, which was that's to me like the heartstrings of the film, and just kind of put them together and bring the audience on a journey. At the end, I mean, we're not telling them to believe one thing or the other. We don't have anyone with really extreme strong opinions and like telling you need to believe this. It's just for the audience to kind of like discover on their own, go through, and then we're hoping that they begin to ask questions at the end.
Yeah, and I think that it's coming out worldwide at a amazing time where we need it. People need comfort, hope. That's one thing that a lot of these near-death experience documentaries or podcasts and stuff like that, they give people the hope that there's an afterlife, that God is real, that Jesus is real.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do a lot of times. And so that's to be expected, though, in a documentary or a film such as this. But there's something this is sticking with me, that as I guess a filmmaker, a director, is that it has awe and wonder with the score and with the visuals, because there's a way to convey a message. There's a way of telling a story, and literally it's in the music and the words that are being spoken at the right times. It is masterfully done, and people are in for an experience. And see, that's the thing. It's one thing just to watch a film or a documentary, but it's one thing to I'm experiencing this, because literally, again, many people are experiencing loss in some form, whether it's their own fear of the unknown or they've lost a loved one. And so yeah, I'm watching it with my wife, and yesterday celebrated the 1-year anniversary of her best friend's death, and there's these endless questions, right? Is she okay? Did it hurt? Will I get to see her again? And many of those, if not all of them, are being addressed and I think answered in this film. So kudos to you and the studio for that. So I mean, what would you say about just the climate with that? There's a heightened SEO. People are Googling this stuff a lot more, and they're thirsty, they're hungry, they're scared. And I mean, what can you speak to the environment of that right now in the world?
Yeah, it's totally true. I think even COVID, right? Like, we shut the world down. A lot of people kind of had unknowns about, their own mortality, and there were losses through that. But then, losses even outside of COVID itself, just in the last few years. I think it's really kind of gripped the world in a way that only something like that's worldwide could really, make us really kind of come to grips with our own mortality, that we're not going to live forever like here on Earth. It's just, that's not the reality. In North America especially, I think different cultures kind of handle this a little differently, but in North America we typically we throw it away. We don't think about it at all unless you're faced with it, like such as I have, and you have as well, like going through loss, really close loss. You just don't think about it. I mean, I didn't think about it before either, to be honest with you. It's just like, it's there to the back of your mind, but it's not the forefront of your mind. And I think that's come now to the forefront the minds of a lot of people, especially here in North America, who otherwise don't think about it. And that's caused people anxiety. I mean, a lot of people have questions about, life after, and is there life after or not? And I think that's the, partly the reason why a lot of people are asking those questions now, is because, we're faced with that. But yeah, for some, it can create a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. I mean, certainly a lot of people are afraid of death. But this film, I think it cracks open a door to hope in a way that only a film really can do. Like you were mentioning earlier, it's an experience, and I mean that was intentional. I'm not going to take credit for how it came across on the screen. We were working with a whole team of incredible artists. Our visual effects team was just unbelievable. We worked with a really talented artist, Thomas Vance, in Paris, France, who did a lot of the kind of cosmic, beautiful imagery.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That really kind of brought us, to like this tangible, but also really expressive, like what could the afterlife look like, and sort of at least getting us like a taste of what that journey could look like. And then sonically, the intention was always that like, hey, we got to get as close as we can there. And Hannah Parrott, who's our composer, she just did an amazing job at just for some of these stories there's really emotional moments, and other parts there's kind of grandiose bigger things, like we're exploring the spiritual realm, we're exploring the afterlife, we're exploring heaven, and she's getting us there, I think, with the music, and it's kind of drawing us in. So in a cinema, the lights are off, we're all together in a room, and it's unlike watching on a TV, in a living room or on a laptop or on a phone. In a movie theater, we're kind of experiencing it together, and it truly is like an experience. And I hope that it kind of like brings us along in a way that's different than watching on a TV. Yeah,
I think it will, and I'm experiencing it in the living room, actually, with my wife. Just before we jumped on here, but one of the things that was mentioned, and you hear this a lot in near-death experiences, but this Christ figure, right? Some people say they know it's Jesus because maybe they're Christians, but there's this light or being of light that comes to them and comforts them, lets them know that everything is okay. And many of the people were talking about, this is Jesus. I know him. I follow him on earth, and here he is. I know it's him. And they talk about this light that is communicating love and like information to them, letting them know that it's okay, it's beautiful, and they're hearing these tones even in music that is just healing and blissful, that they said it didn't sound like anything that you can create on the earth. And one of the things that was mentioned with all of that together in this Christ energy or whatever, or God, was they said that, this is what stuck out to me, that it was as if I was the only one there and the only one in this universe, and that all of this love was like coming to me and for me and towards me. Like this love is towards me, and I'm getting to, it's one thing as a Christian to know that, like, yeah, I know it, but to feel it, and then maybe in that realm to be able to see it, tangibly with the visuals painted that were amazing. But that was something that stuck out to me, and just kind of left an impact. And I'm not even done with the film yet, so.
Oh, I can't wait for you to get through the rest, especially Howard's story. I think, there's a lot to kind of take away with Howard's story. 3/4 of the way through the movie is a big moment. I'm excited for you to get through that. It's I found it very incredible, to be honest with you, hearing so many different people, firsthand, interviewing a lot of these people. In the film, I think we included about 14 people's near-death experiences, and it's in a single film, it's hard to, you want to allow space for the right story to hit and get deep enough with certain people that you can't explore all the stories with the same depth. But still, the intention was always this chorus of voices, talking about things that are overlapping. But we interviewed, plenty of other people that, didn't necessarily make the cut, and it's only because of time. In the film, the thing I found profound was, certainly we're hearing a lot of people who are, meeting Jesus here in North America, Canada, the United States. But you could argue, let's say, that culturally it's being influenced by like a more kind of Christian roots and that kind of stuff. And so, if all we are is our brain, perhaps we're soaking up that environment, and then our brain is just, like sending it, just showing us images of whatever we've kind of been surrounding ourselves in. But then we went out and interviewed people who don't come from the North American experience, and in fact come from cultures that are very far from the Western kind of culture, and even in religion in some cases. We have Steve Kang in the film, who he was born in South Korea, and in his earlier years he was when he'd grown up, they didn't have televisions in homes, they don't have movie theaters that you can go to, there's no Western influence whatsoever, there's no preachers on the street, there's no Bible that's accessible. You're a Buddhist by default. In the same, some could argue that here you could become like a Christian by default, let's say, just because of the culture around you in America, let's say, which I don't really believe, but some could argue the same kind of thing would apply at that time in South Korea. It's a little bit different today, but at that time, you kind of default to the culture and religion that you're raised in, because this is all you know. But he was asking so many questions, and his experience really overlapped a lot of North American experiences. And then we went out and interviewed people. There was a gentleman in Iraq, there was a lady in Israel, there was two or three people that we interviewed in India, one who was an atheist, two that kind of grew up more Hindu, and so very different backgrounds and cultures and beliefs, and that didn't seem to affect the experience that they had. In fact, typically what they experienced was very similar. I think John Burke in our film, he studied near-death experiences for something like 30 years, and in his book Imagine Heavy, kind of he cross-examines 100 cases specifically and how they overlap, and he kind of came to conclude in this kind of study that there seems to be about 40 descriptors of near-death experiences, and what someone describes or articulates and what they experience and what they take away from that could be very different. Someone can come back and say, well, I'm a this, or I'm a that, or I don't believe in religion anymore, or I do. They kind of double down on it, or they don't. It's all different, and that was a little confusing for me when I got into it, to be honest with you. I kind of thought, well, if all these people are having a singular experience, surely they're going to come away with a singular how to live life here, or in terms of like the religion, and it's going to be specific. But that's not always the case. I would say more often than not, it's one thing, but it's not always, certainly not always the case. But what they describe is so common. Like you were saying, it's like, I'm meeting a being of light. Some may not say Jesus, but like Mary would say she knew it was Christ. And when I asked her, like, how do you know it was Christ? And she's like, well, I don't need to ask him, are you Christ? Because she said it'd be ridiculous. In the same way that she's like married to her husband for whatever it was, 40 years. She's like, I wouldn't ask him coming to the door, are you my husband? It's like, no, I know that's my husband. It's like, it's not a confusing thing. It's just, that's my husband. So every time he comes to the door, I wouldn't need to ask him that question. I know exactly who he is. In the same way, I know who this is. And some people in different cultures and different religions would see this same person who's made of light, and is, they would often describe, is not just light like a light bulb, but is and not light like the sun, but is like 1,000 burning suns. I think Dale Black mentioned that the closest thing that actually causes him to weep uncontrollably, that gets him close to what he saw in his near-death experience, the light, would be the first split second after an atom bomb goes off, like a recording of it, before the blast and before the mushroom cloud and all that. Just the quick brightening of the light is like the closest thing, like here on Earth, that he's seen with his eyes, that like can kind of get remotely close to the intensity of the brightness. And some people would say that if they were in the natural, if they were in their physical body and like we're standing before this light, it would incinerate them. It's like absolutely terrifying. And yet in this light, it was the opposite. It's invitational. It's love. And they talk about love is like it's a different it's tangibly different than what we experience here on earth. And I think even in English, love is a word that could mean so many different things. I could say, I love these headphones, and I love my wife. Those are obviously very different things. And God has such a different, love for his creation, a totally different expressible word. But then they would say that also, even trying to use the correct terminology, you can't feel it, you can't experience it here the same as you can experience it there, because there in God's domain, there is it's the absence of death, it's the absence of darkness. So that's why I think it's in Revelation and throughout the Bible talks about how there's going to be no more sorrow, no more death, no more pain, all this kind of stuff, and it like that's what they're experiencing. They're experiencing a place where that doesn't exist. Sin, which is described in the Bible, doesn't exist in that place. Like, it just doesn't exist. And we can't imagine that here because, we see both. We see the light and the dark here on earth. There's even if you don't believe in a spiritual reality, which I do, you could say, well, there's many people that would still describe there's evil in the world. There's evil people in the world. And then there's good people, right? We see that here on earth, but in there it's only good, it's only love, and so they're experiencing it in a different way that we can't really relate here, because there is no real unconditional love here. As much as you could love someone, even to the point where you're willing to die for someone, I think there's still always like a little bit of a thinking about yourself, or I don't know. I don't think it's a perfect selfless love. That's what's experienced there, and it's just tangibly different. Actually, Hila, who is this lady in Israel, who had this near-death experience, she describes this love that she felt as the best way she could describe it was as if it's all the love of every mother that's ever existed on earth, the love that they have for their child, bottled up into a single form, and then like consuming all of that, and it still wouldn't come close to the feeling of the love that God has for you, which is like that's profound, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing, and I think it's so amazing hearing those similarities. Again, cross culture, cross religion. It's just like this seems to be something that's universal outside of this world.
Yeah, that's amazing. So many synchronicities, even just for me listening, and we're trying to make sense out of this stuff, right? And so that's why,
sure,
these films and these topics draw to us. But we talk about spiritual encounters on here, and I've had a number, and I just got done talking with somebody on a podcast about this, but I had this encounter with Jesus. And it was one with my eyes closed, and I saw this immense, beautiful white light with my eyes closed, coming closer and closer and closer to me. And it had this love, and I felt it deep down into my heart, into my soul, into the very fibers of my being. But I also felt like this agony of like towards humanity, and like a compassion of like, I'm trying to get your attention, and this kind of stuff. And it was amazing, and it took over my vision, and all I saw was just bright light, and I felt it. I was literally screaming at the top of my lungs, praying with a couple friends at a prayer meeting at somebody's house, and they could feel it coming off of me. It was just a beautiful moment that is like one of the staples of my life. That wasn't my come to Jesus moment, but I've shared that encounter in the past with people who even weren't Christian, and they would say, that wasn't Jesus, that was this, or whatever the case is. And it's like, yeah. I kind of, my response is simply like the lady that you interviewed and shared a story. I recognize it wasn't a facial feature that I recognized. It was a love, it was a compassion, it was a presence. And so these stories are so impactful, that we can these people come back with something tangible.
Yeah.
And I would say that I did, right? There's something like you don't just go about life as usual. These people given a second chance at life to redo things, to right wrongs and things like that, and it changes everything. And the beauty of the thousand suns, you mentioned that. I got a song. I named the song that, like, staring at the beauty of a thousand suns, and it's all about an encounter in the love of Jesus. So again, these memes, these synchronicities, these consistencies that you hear, that people all over the world are encountering, experiencing when they die and go to heaven, when they open their heart and heaven comes in to them while they're still alive. Right. Man, it's so awesome, and it's powerful. And that's the message that I've experienced, and I want to continue to experience it and tell and share in different ways we can. And we know the power of art, and we know the power of sharing and telling these stories, and it's such a amazing job. So with that, though, let's talk about this real quick. Let's switch it up a little bit. And I'm not finished with the film, but I do know it's in there. There's a little bit of imagery. It's in the trailer, and I saw a little bit of it already, and but not all the experiences were like this beautiful, blissful experience. It's like real easy to say, hey, when you die, you're with God, it's over. Like, I haven't finished it, but can you talk a little bit about the hellish experiences that some people have experienced in these near-death experiences?
Yeah, for sure. And just to really kind of back up for a split second on that, to be honest with you, I wasn't. It's not like I'm excited to have this be a part of the film. On a personal level, I mean, I wish that didn't exist, personally. But the reality is, in these near-death experiences, there's definitely a portion of people, many who I've talked to, who've had a hellish near-death experience, and they won't necessarily all describe and saying that I went to hell, but some would say, it was a distressing near-death experience. It left them with PTSD. Many of them who had the hellish experience had PTSD. Howard was one of them. It's a reality of what these people are experiencing, and it's just like, it wouldn't be fair for me to not include it, because this is something that people are experiencing. And most of the films that are out there, they don't talk about this, and most of the books that are out there, they don't talk about this. And I just, after talking to several people who've had that, and hearing their story, I was just like, I think it needs to be included, because it's only fair in that this does happen. And I don't want to say that their experience is invalid, right? If we're saying that all, these people who clinically died and had these experiences, whatever they experience is valid, then it's only fair to kind of give that also to the hellish near-death experiences. In terms of the number, I mean, in our film, we have 3 people who had hellish near-death experiences. I don't know if that perfectly represents, the amount of people. It's hard to say specifics on that. There's a lot of hindrances to reports of near-death experiences. I mean, even heavenly ones. Many people who have near-death experiences don't really want to share it. I think, maybe the general public probably think that everyone wants to share it, and they're writing books and they're making tons of cash off it, and that's the reason why they're wanting to share their experience. But actually, it's literally the opposite. Most people don't want to share their experience because they're afraid that you're not going to believe them, right? It's really talking about something that isn't the norm for a lot of people. And like I say, if you have a doctor like Dr. Mary Neal, who comes forward and talks about her experience, she's an introvert, and she's a very private person. She has a family, and she has her own clinical practice. She's doing well enough. She doesn't need the book sales, and she can live a private life as best she wants to, but she felt compelled to tell her story because that was more real than here. And so that's the compelling argument for some of these people who come forward and tell their story. But there's certainly skepticism from a lot of people, even in the heaven experiences. So I would say even more so, there's skepticism and sort of a ridicule for people who have hellish experience. If there's that much more reason to not come forward and share a heaven experience, I would say it's even more to not share a hellish experience. So I wonder even, if there's that much more hellish experiences that just don't want to talk about it, because it's scary. It's full of shame. It's like, if you're not going to believe someone, even worse, like, well, why did you have a hellish experience? You must have been a bad person, right? So, and we get into some of that in the film, but we only get into it in them sharing their story. So you kind of have to, draw a conclusion, or kind of come, to pick apart the pieces that your information that you're getting as to like how that came to be. Howard is our main story in our film, who had a hellish near-death experience. And so he probably had the biggest transformation of everyone in the film. He was a university professor and atheist, and he had lived his life, I think, decades at that point, being an atheist. He doesn't believe in anything after, like, absolutely nothing, to the point where he's about to take his last breath and like confidently go into nothingness. Assume that when he dies, he just ceases to exist. And to his surprise, he does continue to exist. And actually, the first few moments of his near-death experience was, good. It was the typical stuff we would hear, where he felt that this warm light that was entering the room. He felt like he felt better than he's ever felt his entire life. He had all these different senses that that he doesn't have here. He had near 360-degree vision, so he could see behind him, in front of him, above, down, everywhere, all at once. He also could see faraway detail and close-up detail at the same time, without needing to think about it or focus, which doesn't make any sense, right? Like, it's not the way our brain or our eyes work, and yet in this spirit, this is what he was experiencing. He had a body, and yet when he turned around, to his surprise, he sees his physical body in the bed. And when he sees his body in the bed, who's not moving, he's very alarmed. Doesn't want to think about it, so he actually just ignores it. And he tries to talk to his wife, who's in the room, and she's just gone. She's just, she's at a loss. She just lost her husband, and she's not responding to him at all. And I can't remember if I don't think he thought much of it. He was upset that she's not responding, but it's probably like she's just too, emotionally gone that she can't respond. So he doesn't think much of it. He's called into the hallway in this hospital room, and he thinks that these people are bringing him to surgery. They're speaking to him in plain English, from what he had heard. But this hospital is in Paris, France, and not a single person speaks English, let alone not having an accent. There's no one knew any English in this hospital to that point. And so it was a little peculiar, but again, not thinking much of it. And when he was asking them, are you here to, take me to I need to see a doctor, I need to get fixed. They said, we know you, Howard, we know all about you, and you need to come with us. So he proceeds to go with them, and he basically goes on a long journey towards infinite darkness. So it started in the hotel, or the hospital room, and you could see the hospital room for a period of time, still look back, still while journeying into this darkness. But when he got into, he said, abject darkness. So it was dark, it was blacker than black. He would say it's not like the lights are off here. It's not like a moonless, starless night, cloudy night with the lights off. It's blacker than black. So it's like the inverse of light is where in this place he's in, and he's surrounded by these people, these beings who are wanting to continue. And he just eventually was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go here. Like, this isn't the hospital. And they start basically, getting very upset, arguing with him, and then physically start attacking him. And he said he couldn't see them anymore because of this darkness, but he could sense, he said he probably figured there's probably hundreds of them at that point. And they were surrounding him, and they had nails. So he said that he would describe them as people, but there were some differences in that. So they had claws or nails, and they had teeth that were very sharp, because they were actually clawing and biting him, his flesh, which is, as what he described, is like he could feel a sensation of having a body, and it was being ripped to shreds. So he felt everything the same as you'd feel here, like in the physical, but he can't die. So it continued on, but all of a sudden, this is the exciting part of his story. There's more in the film, by the way. I'm not giving away too much, but I think it's such an interesting story to highlight. He has a memory of himself as a small child. He doesn't know why. His picture comes to his mind when he's in this void, and he sees himself as a small child, and he's brought to a Sunday school. And I can't remember if the story was that it was one time or twice. It was just like, someone on the street or someone had brought him to his Sunday school. And at this Sunday school program, they taught him a simple song, "Jesus loves me, this I know." And he sees himself as a child, singing this song. And he just had this feeling of, that's not me. Like, I'm so far from that. That little boy, for whatever reason, believed in this Jesus. I don't believe in that. And then he heard this voice tell him to pray. And at first he doesn't do anything. He doesn't know, what is that? Hears it again very clearly, pray. And then he says in his head, he's thinking, I don't pray. What do you mean pray? There's nothing to say. Like, what words do I say? And then it was very clearly the third one. It was very insistent, pray. And so then he just started saying things like, I don't know, like, God save America, like just different random things. Even I think he said something in the First Amendment. I don't know, just little things that he remembered about American culture and things. And when he would say God, that seemed to actually do it. It made the people that are around him very angry, a lot louder, and yet physically, though, they moved back. Physically, they were drawn away. And then all of a sudden, kind of from the bottom of his gut, he just kind of came up, rose up in him, shouting at the top of his lungs, calling out to Jesus to save him. He just cried out to Jesus to save him in this place. And the basically Jesus comes and rescues him from this place. As he's rescuing him, and he's being pulled up towards like this galaxy, and he felt like he was kind of coming towards heaven. He was going at a speed that was, he said, just like an unbelievable speed, and yet not feeling the G-force of it. And he's being brought up by Jesus, and as Jesus is like embracing him, he feels his body being healed and restored all over. And then it doesn't end at the body and the flesh that he had around him, but then it continues inside, and it's like an inner deep healing to his soul in a way that only like Jesus could get to. And then he's like fully restored. And then he just says, you're making a mistake. He's looking down at where they were coming from, and afraid that Jesus would let him go, that he would fall back down there. And he just says, that was the trash place of the universe, but that's where I wanted. That's where I go. That's where I belong. Like, you're making a mistake. Like, what are you doing? Jesus stops, and he just looks at him and just says, we don't make mistakes. When Jesus speaks to him, he doesn't say it with words. He looks to him and he says it's like telepathic. So it's an immediate, and the way he describes it, it's not like words like that implant in your brain, you're hearing a voice. He says it's just an immediate awareness. The dialogue is like heart-to-heart dialogue, so there's no question about articulation or words. It's not a language that's like English words entering your brain. It's just a totally different way of communication that you just immediately exactly know what's meant by it. You know the intention, and you know the words, and the words and intention was, we don't make mistakes. You do belong here. And that's absolutely profound. That Howard's story doesn't end there. Like, his life takes a 180 turn. He goes from an atheist university professor, years later, leaving his job, taking a 90% pay cut, and in becoming a pastor, still to this day. This happened in 1985, the near-death experience, and still to this day, serving the poor, serving the people who don't have, and that's how he lives his life, in service to others. That's his whole life. Like, why would you give up, this everything you kind of accumulated in terms of status and symbols and all that kind of stuff and wealth, give all that up in service to other people? Like, this experience transformed him that much. And he's not the only story. We have a few in the film where they had that much transformation. So anyway, you're talking about hell, but there's so much more than just just this scary kind of experience. There's just like this richness of God, and like, why are these people experiencing this? And then I would say, for me, one of the big takeaways is like, between the heaven and the hellish experiences, it's like, what's going on here, God? And I feel like God is just like giving us a glimpse of this reality of life after. And my hope really is that the people who are watching this film, that they kind of come away with something similar to what I kind of came away with, which is, if there is life after, and if heaven is a reality after, what could that mean for this time that we have here? I know that time is short. I know that life is fragile because of the loss I had gone through with my brother-in-law. Not everyone has that same experience, but a lot of people are asking questions now, and I think this timing is so providential that this film's coming out now, and in the way that it's coming out. And yeah, I hope that it has an impact on culture. I hope it has an impact on people in a way that really only a film that's going out to this many people and that many screens all at once. I hope that it has this impact that causes people to ask these questions.
Yeah, I think it's coming out because people are asking the questions too. Like, it's like you ask the question, you get an answer, and what is the answer? You come to a conclusion, like you're talking about. There's enough people who aren't connected saying the same thing. If you can probably take it to the bank. If 2 + 2 = 4 here, it probably equals it somewhere else. And so, for me, it's where, there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about, let a thing be established out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Like, when there's something that's repeating over and over and there is no coercion, these people aren't connected, and they're in many cases not even Christians, so they don't even know that concept, and they're having these similar experiences. It's comforting to know. This is what I do for a living, interviewing people. And so as a Christian, and I've talked to so many different people, different faiths and stuff, man, over 550 something episodes, been doing this for a long time. And I could see that in my faith, in my dogma that maybe wasn't good, but I could see Christ, I could see love, I could see hope in many different people from different backgrounds. And I thought that they read the Bible, because like you can see Jesus in everything and everyone. At least I could at that moment. And it really changed me. And people are asking that question, and now I'm living my life honoring him and everything, and every person, because I feel like he's in there. So these stories that people are sharing, it's answering questions, even for me. And maybe the answer to a question, we might not like this, is more questions. But that's part of this journey, because come on, like, this is what podcasts, this is what movies and film and dialogue is for, to share your pieces of the story, piece of the puzzle, bring it together, and see if it fits. I'm studying too myself, and you hear it in the film. Someone said, I'm a spirit, I have a soul, and they both were in that body, and it's so this is the difference. And even these hellish experiences, what goes there? Does the spirit go there? Is it the soul that goes there, goes back to where it came from? Are we leveling up the soul to become a living spirit kind of thing? But these are the things that a lot of people are talking about and asking those questions right now. So it's good to give them something else to look at, something to consider or reconsider. So I'm excited about all of these topics, and there's a rise in them. Like, it's just, I've done several near-death experience episodes. All of them immediately are like at the top, and because people are looking this stuff up online because they have questions.
That's really cool. I was gonna say there was a couple adjacent kind of points I was gonna mention. there's something we don't have in the film, but I thought it was interesting that John Burke, again, he went through kind of a 30-year journey. He didn't start out as a Christian. He was actually an agnostic, and his dad was dying of cancer, and he heard about these near experiences. He read everything he could get his hands on at the time, and I think it was like the early 70s, and then went on this journey, right? But early in his journey, he had come to faith through these near-death experiences. But he'd also studied all the different kind of main world religions and their texts, because he was curious about these near-death experiences he was convinced are happening, and what these people are reporting is like there's uncannily, they're very similar. The overlap is there for sure. So how does that correlate with religious texts and especially ancient religious texts? And so he got his hands on everything he could, read it through many times, studied it, and then tried to compare it to near-death experiences. And I thought this is like amazing that he found that there was a couple of religious texts that had, I think he said 5 or 6 of the common core descriptors of near-death experiences, which like being of light and love, and having that light permeates everything, and that all of these kind of things of what people are describing, and then also the hellish stuff and everything too. But then he found, when he read through the Hebrew Bible, and this is what kind of secured his faith in terms of like settling on Christianity, it was actually 38 out of the 40 common core descriptors that matched what was described in the Bible in terms of what to expect in the life to come in heaven. That's what really what like logically got John to kind of conclude that I guess Christianity must be the one. And it's only deepened his faith and enriched his life. And like there's so much more in the Bible. There's a lot of the Bible has a lot of spiritual language, and I want to say I probably read through a lot of that stuff before getting into near-death experiences, but I would say I read through it a little bit differently now, that it just like comes to life in a different way. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like in Romans there's so much richness here talking about things that are spiritual that I didn't have eyes for. I guess my spiritual eyes are open in a way that was a little bit different, and so I'm reading it in a different way, and it's coming to life in a different way. And you mentioned in terms of like hellish experiences and stuff. Now, this isn't necessarily like a death experience, but a lot of people would describe things like sleep paralysis, let's say, and seeing demons. That's like kind of a very common thing. It's something on their chest and that's choking them and things like that. But very commonly, I would also hear that the only thing that seems to work is calling out the name of Jesus.
Yes.
And then and if they can, and when if they do, or when they do, this thing that's choking them will leave. And to me, that's just kind of like doubles down on like there has to be something to Jesus, and it's not like just a name to use, but get to know who is this Jesus, like who is he, where's and to kind of discover that. And I think God's ultimate desire, and which comes through in a lot of near-death experiences, is wanting to have a relationship with us, that we are his children, that we're his creation. And I think a lot of these near-death experiences point to people to the reality of God, the reality of heaven and hell. But ultimately, he wants to reconcile his relationship with us. I mean, that's the story of Jesus, why Jesus came and died for us, died for our sins on the cross, that he was God and came and died. And he was the only one that could do that to overcome sin and death, so that we can have that reunion with God. And I think, to me, it's a very powerful story. We, again, with the film, we keep it a little bit separate. We don't hit everyone over the head. That's just my personal journey and my personal opinion. But I just wanted to share that because I just feel like there's such a power, I think, with Jesus, and it is. I think that's really ultimately, what a lot of these things are pointing to.
Yeah, and it's once you hear the thing over and over, the same way, is the meme. There's probably something to it. And again, with the sleep paralysis and the Jesus thing, for sure. We put out a little documentary about demons, and that's one of the things that we mentioned. My good friend Joshua Fluman, that was his quote, and it's in there, and it's like there's one thing in common and running through all these things when they say the name of Jesus, and it's not Muhammad or Buddha or whatever, right? They say Jesus, man, the event stops immediately, and so you got people who, again, you say like it's a we're supposed to come into a relationship, grow into it.
Exactly.
And it's not just a name that we call on. Maybe for some, it started there. They knew that, like,
Sure.
hey, if I say this name, it's gonna. But then it's a relationship. Okay, you are strength. You are a shield. You are a friend.
Yeah.
These kind of things, and you grow deeper into the relationship, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think that like there's got to be something to why that name is used, like that seems to have power and authority, but that name isn't just a name. Like it's a person. It's it's like God wants to have relationship. I think that's the whole point of humans and to have relationship with God. So I hope that people kind of come there. But back to the film really quickly, I was going to say one way that people can in terms of like getting tickets and that kind of stuff, we have a website through Angel Studios, who's the distribution company behind the film. We're really excited to partner with them on the distribution because they're the ones who got this film out to above 2,000 screens across North America, which is crazy for a documentary like this. I mean, it's totally like 100% is a God thing. 100%. None of us could have planned that. We signed on with them before they had released a film direct to theaters. And then they did two. The one before us was Sound of Freedom, and certainly kind of made waves in the industry. And it's opened a door and a path for our film to get out to that many people, which is really exciting. So people can get tickets at angel.com/afterdeath. But one really cool thing that's kind of unique with Angel Studios and with our film is that we have a pay it forward program. So if you go to a different URL, it's angel.com/lifeafter. It brings you to a pay it forward page. So if people want to, they can pay for a ticket for someone that otherwise can't afford it. But also, the flip side, if you can't afford a ticket or you don't want to buy a ticket, all you have to do is go to that URL and you can claim a free ticket, because there's many who have already paid it forward. And we just want to make this film as accessible as possible and get as many people into those seats as possible for everyone to kind of experience this film together in the theater.
So that's for the actual showing, not just the online viewing. Oh wow,
that's right.
That's
amazing.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Wow, because I was just thinking, you're just sending a link. No, it's like it's to the showing at the theaters.
That's
wow,
right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's next level. Yeah, I was like, okay, it's a pay it forward link. Should just click share. It's like, no, actually go and get the popcorn and watch it with the family. Heck yeah.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thinking outside the box, and it seems to work, right? When you're trying to help, when you're trying to heal, it definitely you got just like the film shows, you got angels on your side. You got God in your corner anytime you're trying to help and trying to correct the mistakes and all that good stuff. So, man, dude, thanks for coming on, hanging out with me,
so
exploring this stuff. This is what we talk about and think about all day long. So it was perfect. And I'm gonna go, as soon as this is done, I'm gonna go finish watching the film with my wife, and because I have a unique screening link just for me. But yeah, everybody go see it. And I'm gonna be talking about this more for sure.
Right on. Well,
Thank
so
you,
much,
man.
Derek.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye.